All right, guys, let's jump back in. I'm going to try to finish up the asks that I have, and then I'm going to do a video next time on a deep dive into Clara, who is the creepy walker-looking woman from 401. I haven't asked about that, and so I'm going to kind of give it its own video. But let's do these asks first. All right. Bella Angel, I have a few of them from you, so let's dive into yours. So just letting you know that I'm new to Tumblr and I don't speak English, so I use a translator in case there are any wrong words. I wanted to know your opinion on some things I noticed in Daryl Dixon related to Beth. Contains season 1 and 2 spoilers. The scene of the woman holding the man's hands, a couple, at the very end of the last episode of season 2 of Daryl Dixon reminded me of Beth entwining her hands with Daryl's. The scenes were identical, even the position of the hands. So yeah, I have, this may well have come in before I posted my videos. I don't know, but I have addressed that. A lot of people have. It definitely felt like a callback to Alone and when they held hands. So yeah, I agree with you there. And number 2, in season 4 of TWD, episode 2, Beth is bandaging Michonne's foot, and she talks about there being widow, orphan, but no word for someone who loses a child, and they should give a name for that. I noticed that in season 2 of Daryl Dixon, episode 6, last one, there's a scene where Ash is fixing the hood of the car, and Daryl talks to him. Then Ash says, when you lose a wife, husband, you're widowed, but when you lose a child, there's no word for that. And then Daryl says, that's something hard to name. This in particular reminded me a lot of her. Yeah. Again, in that last episode, they were being so on the nose with repeating Beth's dialogue, acting out scenes that Beth and Daryl did before. I mean, even if, let's put it this way, even if you didn't believe that she was alive and coming back, what would be the point of that? Why would they keep doing that? For the handhold scene, I mean, I suppose you could argue, I would disagree with you, but you could argue that it's a foreshadow of Daryl finding a love interest. And I mean, all that does is confirm that Beth was also a love interest back in season 4. But what would be the point of repeating this dialogue that she had? To me, and I don't even know if I talked about this when I did my video, this specific line is part of the children and babies around Beth symbolism, okay? She's talking about losing a child. And then we had a lot of that symbolism around her because she took care of baby Judith, because she lost baby Judith when the prison went down. She couldn't find her. She told Daryl she was looking for all the kids to get them on the bus. I mean, there's a lot of this symbolism around her. It's also around a lot of people who are proxies for her. And so this line is part of that symbolism. And so what would be the point of repeating this line unless it's going to come into play pretty soon, right? So, yeah, definitely this was something that I think was intentional. Other things reminded me of them, like some of these things you've already mentioned. The group Daryl meets before being taken to the ship reminded me of the ones he joined when he lost Beth. Yeah, they were a lot like the Claimers. I remember that. The fight Daryl had with Laurent seemed like the one he had with Beth when Daryl cursed him and then hugs him, just like he hugged Beth and she hugged him, definitely. You guys remember, I still remember that Norman said that scene was really hard to do because he had to get in his face and scream at him, and he felt so bad screaming at this, like, 14-year-old kid. But, of course, the kid that plays Laurent Louis is, like, a pro, and he was fine, but it was more like Norman that was having a hard time with it. I thought that was cute. Anyway, when Daryl sees his father's grave, it reminded me of the two of them looking at the grave marked beloved father, definitely. The flowers that Carol is tending with Ash are yellow, look like the ones Daryl put on the grave they saw. I don't think there's much there. They must be weeds, so it doesn't count, but it reminded me of Bethyl. I do think symbolically it counts, though, because we see those flowers, yellow flowers, very often around death. They may even be, because they're yellow, they may even be an escape or resurrection symbol. I mean, they're specifically flowers, and I think they're kind of in their own little bracket because of that. But if you think about the yellow flowers around Beth in the graveyard, yes, they were in a graveyard. She was mourning her father. You could bring in all of that symbolism, but it also could, the yellow could have been a symbol of her yellow polo, which wasn't going to happen until the next season. And Daryl because she didn't put the flowers on the grave. Daryl put the flowers on the grave. And of course he did it for her and in remembrance of Herschel, and it was very sweet, but it almost seems like a foreshadow of him putting flowers on her grave when he believes she's dead. So either way, I think the yellow is important. And there were a lot of symbols that were parallels to Beth and everything about her, and also Sophia, around Ash and his son. So I think the yellow flowers are important there. I do think they count. Isabel looks like Beth with the hair, the thin body, the cut on her wrist, same arm as Beth's, or the stab wound on her shoulder on the same arm as Beth's, the one in the cast. Yeah, definitely. She was definitely a Beth proxy. So yeah, I'm with you there. Daryl helping her walk after she hurt herself and cleaning the wound, just like he did with Beth. Or how Isabel says Mr. Dixon for the first time, which reminded me of Beth saying, yes, Mr. Dixon. Daryl with a guitar, even similar to Emily Kinney's, and soon afterwards starts singing at the beginning of the last episode of the second season of Daryl Dixon. Yeah, I've been over that a lot, like the fulfilling of the I Never. He finally did sing, so that one's been fulfilled. The Mona Lisa, in addition to the drawing of her with a hole in her head, Emily once posted a photo in her stories inside the Louvre in front of the Mona Lisa. Just her in the painting. If you don't have the photo and want it, you can tell me. I think I have it somewhere. I'll see if I can find it for this. And remember, too, that, and I'm going to try to find this, too. I think I put it in another video, so I should have it on the top somewhere. Eric Jensen also posted a zombified picture of the Mona Lisa that had a bullet in its forehead right where Beth was shot. And I believe that was in response to a fan saying, are you or the other actors who were at Grady going to be on the show again? And that's what he posted. Super suspicious, and it does suggest that he, who was kind of a side character, right, at Grady, knew something about the Mona Lisa symbolism. And then, of course, that bullet, like, yeah. Anyway, he's specifically giving us hints about Beth's arc there. And I don't see him doing that if she was just dead and not coming back. Like, what would be the point of posting that, right? In the last episode of season 2, when Anna Valerie, singer and second boss of the Demi-Monde, dies holding the gate bars, the camera focuses on her hands and her nails are red. Emily loves red nails. Am I going crazy? Maybe, but it felt a little bit Bethyl. It really did, at least for me. I don't think you're going crazy. Yeah, most of those people have picked up on, and, you know, maybe not everybody agrees with every single one, but if more than one person picks up on it, I do think it's a thing. In Fear the Walking Dead, episode 806, we can see the hand that writes the coordinates, and on the right side of the screen, there are no scars. The top of the hand appears very quickly before it starts writing. But on Troy's right hand in episode 807, he is holding a sitting man. You can see a scar. It would have been the lighting, but I don't think so because I changed the brightness of the video and it looked the same, maybe a mistake, and Troy's hair is shorter and darker than what appeared in the coordinate scene. Okay, yeah, so I did talk about this a little bit too. I was talking about it more in the context of the blonde hair and the curl, but what she's saying is that when we see the hands writing down the coordinate, you know, as we've already said, there's no way that is the actor who played Troy because those hands are very fine. They're probably feminine. It could be a male, but probably only if it's a very young male, like a teenager, because they don't look like big, manly hands, right? They look like a woman's hands. And even if you just said, oh, this particular man just happens to have very fine-boned hands. Okay, that happens. But when you look at the actor that plays Troy, his hands are not like that. They're pretty big. And what she's saying is that he has scars on his hands, which were not on the hands of the person who was writing down the coordinates with the blonde hair. So very, very clearly, this is not the same actor. And you could argue that they just didn't have him there and he couldn't shoot the scene, and so they had to use someone else. But it's called a body double, right? I mean, shows do this all the time for stunt doubles and when people can't stand in and things like that, but it has to look like it's actually them. And this is a professional production. You know, we know that they keep stunt doubles. We know they keep body doubles. They show us pictures of those body doubles, and from behind, you wouldn't be able to tell that that's not the real actor. So if they're putting somebody in this scene that is very clearly not Troy, they're doing it on purpose. What does it mean? Who is it actually? I don't know. Could it be Beth? Yeah, it could be. Could it be somebody else? Yes, it could be. If it is somebody else and they're not trying to say that it's Beth, then what I would say is that they were hinting at her, hinting at somebody else listening, somebody else being alive. And see, in the last video I did when I talked about, somebody had asked for conjecture on how Beth would return. And I remember I talked about how there's a lot of things around hearing somebody's voice on the radio. This is one of them. Literally, we have someone who looks like Beth, who has fine hands and blonde hair, looks like a slim woman, listening to the coordinates on the radio and writing them down, okay? To me, that screams Beth, radio voice, right? And so that's why some of our headcanons involve that, because we just keep seeing that symbolism over and over again, okay? So yeah, good point about the scars and the hands, because like I said, I talked more about the hair and the curl than I did about the hands, but that's just another excellent point, and I 100% agree with you. So yeah, thank you for sending those in. It's a really good, not only is it a good reminder, but it's a good to have them all listed like that, because one thing that pops off that's independent of everything else really might just be us seeing something that isn't there. But when you have all of these and you look at the long list, I mean, guys, a coincidence is a one-off, right? These are not coincidence anymore. There's way too many of them, and it has to be intentional and heading towards something. So thank you very much for those. I think I have one or two more by you. Yeah, okay. 1, 2, just the 2. So let's go through these. There was another scene from Daryl Dixon season 2 where Daryl screams Isabel's name twice when she's being taken away by Lo-Sang. It reminded me a lot of him shouting Beth's name twice too when she was being taken away. In general, since the first season, I had already noticed some things about Beth, but the second season surpassed itself, and there were many moments that reminded me of her. Yeah, I agree. A lot of people noticed that he called Isabel's name, and I think that was a callback to Beth. I'm sure there are people that were a little disturbed by that because it made it seem like he was in love with Isabel. And I mean, maybe you couldn't really refute that in and of itself, except that it was like right around that episode that Norman came out with that interview where he said it was an experiment. He's trying to see if there's something there. So that tells you that it's not because he's in love with her. He does care about her. So yeah, he knew she was hurt. He didn't want Lo-Sang to hurt her more. All of those things are true. But to me, if he's going out of his way to let us know that this is not because he's in love with her, then the only other explanation for that is that it's mirroring Beth. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. All right, what do you think about this? A few days ago, Emily posted some photos on her story in the botanical garden next to some flowers. On the sign that indicates the name of the plants was Love at First Sight. Her face was smiling, and I think in the second photo she was looking a little at the side where the flowers were, suspect. After watching the last episode of the second season of Daryl Dixon, I noticed that Kodron keeps saying the phrase Love at First Sight a few times throughout the episode in reference to the same couple who holds hands like Bethyl. Unfortunately, I didn't save the photos. After watching the episode, I realized they were the same phrases, but by then it was too late. The story had already disappeared. I know. Damn stories on Instagram, right? If you have the photos, please send them to me. I don't, unfortunately. I don't have the photo of this. If anyone else does, you can send it in. But yeah, I mean, the Love at First Sight thing is really interesting. I'm trying to figure out how to put that in context for us, because I'm certainly not against it, and it seems like that's something they're pushing, and I'm all for it. But it almost doesn't apply in the way that I'm thinking about it either way, because the first time around, season 4, they'd known each other for a long time. So most people, even if they're seeing each other in a new light, like when Isabel said that, I'm going to forget the French word now, that means seeing something in a new way or a new light, that I could see, because they'd known each other at the prison for a long time. And we've talked about how Beth was definitely crushing on Daryl, but I don't think she believed he would ever feel that about her, because she thought he saw her as just like a schoolgirl and a damsel in distress and all of that. But he didn't really start looking at her differently until they were on the road together. So you can see that being the case with Beth and Daryl, but most people would not say love at first sight because they've just known each other so long, right? Now, maybe, and of course, really, this is a foreshadow. But even when they find each other again, it's not the first time they're seeing each other. So, I mean, just in a literal way, it doesn't work. But the fact that they're pushing it this way, it feels like they have something in mind for it. And I'm not sure what it is. I mean, you could call it symbolic, love at first sight. And I did say something like this once before, that, especially as compared to Isabel in a literal way. And Norman saying that thing about how this is just an experiment, so he doesn't know if he's in love with Isabel. He's just trying it out to see if there's a potential relationship with there. I don't think that's going to be the case with Beth, because they already have a history. So you could call it love at first sight, because when they see each other, they're just going to know. It's just going to be there again. It's going to be like a continuation of what was going on before. And so to other people around them who don't know about their history, that could appear to be love at first sight. And like, dude, you guys haven't seen each other for 10 years and you've known each other 5 minutes and what the heck, but you know what I mean? So that would seem like love at first sight to other people. Maybe that's what they're hinting at. I'm not sure. But anyway, that was a big long tangent. I do really like what you said here. I did completely miss this, so I didn't see it, but that's really great that she put love at first sight into one of her posts right around the time that it was also on the show. This is a really good example of what I always say that the actors do. They will post something that they can still have plausible deniability about. So if anybody said, oh, this is about Walking Dead, she could be like, no, it's not. It's some flowers. That's all I posted. You know what I mean? So it's not obviously TWD, and that makes it very easy to debunk. But there's just too often that they post something that's too much of a coincidence based on what's happening in the show, that it has too much Beth symbolism revolving around it. I mean, just kind of like the one I mentioned a couple of videos ago where she posted the poem about being the light in the darkness, and that was at the same time that they're doing this missing poster for Quadron, and they did all the tunnel symbolism and all of that, right? It's just too much of a coincidence for me to believe it's a coincidence. So thanks for pointing this out. I wish we did have the pictures for it, but like I said, I missed it, so I'm glad to hear about it. And yeah, I'm definitely on the same page. It definitely seems suspicious and like it was done on purpose. All right, I'm going to go ahead and push through these. I've only got 2 more. It's going to make the video a little bit longer, but I don't think you guys mind that. So, hey, I don't know if it was already covered or not, but I was thinking about this one thing that didn't make sense to me about Grady Bunch and them possibly finding Beth in a car. Like, why would they care? Why were they so insistent to keep people in the hospital if they aren't immune? But if Beth is in fact immune, it does make sense to even shoot her. They knew that Team Family will take her away. So what was the only way to keep her, or at least her immune blood? Yes, they shot her, knowing that Team Family would have to leave her body at some point. Grady people only had to follow and coordinate the zombies to where Team Family been keeping Beth and collect her body after. I mean, I didn't think, not even for a minute, that they don't have anything to do with that zombie horde that attacked Beth and Daryl at the funeral home. Maybe they even found them when Team Family attempted to bury her. Yeah, I mean, this is, what you've said here is the basic crux of what we think is probably going on. And we don't know the exact details. Like you say, why did they care? Is it because she's immune? Is it something else? We don't know the exact details of that. But we do think that, I mean, on the one hand, yeah, I've said before that it kind of boggles my mind that more people don't question the zombies showing up on the porch in Still. That was so planned. It seemed like such a setup. And nobody really questions it, or the fact that they never explained it. But if they could control those zombies, no reason they don't control others, right? And we know that there were 800 Walker extras that were filming for Coda that we never saw on the show. And that's part of the missing 17 days. But yeah, basically, I agree. If it wasn't Grady, if we're like wrong about that in some way, I really don't think we are, especially given Eric Jensen's comments and some of the other actors who were on set and Nicotero's Grady comment. I don't think we're wrong, okay? But if it just so happened that we were wrong and she didn't go back to Grady and that's not the thing, then it would be something else. It would be whatever the bigger organization was in the situation. Because, okay, so here's another conjecture for you, or another Bethyl headcanon. I feel like at some point Beth is going to have a conversation either with Daryl or with the entire group, Team Family, where she's going to tell them that there were so many things going on in season 4 that their group was just utterly oblivious to. Okay, there was a bigger force in the area that was trying to direct things. You know, this force might have noticed when the prison went down. This force might have been watching them for a long time. We thought it was the CRM for a long time. It might still be, or it could be something else. We're just not sure because they haven't told us. This force might have been the people that Grady was in contact with. This force might have been the ones who started tracking Beth and Daryl after they burned down the Moonshine Shack and eventually found them at the funeral home, right? This force might have been responsible for a lot of the weirdo things that happened in season 4, but Team Family was not aware of them. And what the show did, especially in those early seasons, is that they weren't showing us an omniscient point of view. Okay, so they weren't just going around showing us everything that was happening. We were really seeing it from the characters' points of view. So, yeah, we were seeing all of the different characters. You know, first they would have an episode about Rick and Michonne, and then one about Carol and Tyrese and the kids, and then one about Beth and Daryl. So we were seeing all the different characters, but we were only seeing what the characters themselves were seeing. And this carried over to season 5. I think they've done it in a lot of the other seasons too, but not to as great an extent. So we always say that Coda was from Rick's point of view. Okay, that's why it's so confusing at times, because they were really only showing us what Rick was perceiving. And it's really interesting that they do that because it allows them to kind of manipulate what the audience sees and what the audience believes. And in season 4, I feel like there was a greater force, a greater organization, a greater group of people, whatever it was, that was controlling a lot of the strange events that were happening in season 4 and season 5 too. And because Team Family was unaware of them, so were we. And so I just feel like at some point Beth's going to have a conversation with them and be like, okay, I'm going to tell you some things about the stuff that went down in Atlanta that's going to blow your mind because you didn't even realize this was happening. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that plays into what you're saying here. And I don't know exactly what Grady's motivations were, but people have said this before, that maybe they just didn't want her to be taken away. Another headcanon that I have a lot is that because she was bitten, assuming that she was bitten and we're right about that, that the group that she was with assumes that she's immune. And to me, she doesn't even actually have to be immune. To them, she's just somebody who survived a walker bite. And so naturally, they're going to be very interested in her and want to experiment on her and try to use her to find a cure. But I mean, it could be that she survived because of kind of random reasons, stuff they had at Grady that isn't duplicatable. And so she could say, I'm really not immune. If I get bitten tomorrow, I'm still going to die, but that doesn't matter to them. They think that she's immune, and the perception is everything. So she's constantly on the run because if they get a hold of her, she's never going to see the light of day again. She's going to become a test subject. That's another one that me and my fellow theorists have talked about sometimes because there's so much emphasis on the experiments, on the test subjects. You get test subject 19 in the pilot episode, who was the wife of Dr. Jenner. You know what I mean? There's just a lot of emphasis on that. So anyway, I do 100% agree. And I think that there's a lot here that we are unaware of as yet that they still need to explain to us. But I think they will explain it at some point. We're just sitting over here waiting for them to get to it. So hopefully soon. Thank you for your ask. All right, I started having thoughts surrounding Genet and the Mona Lisa, but after her death, I was like, okay, maybe not, but I'd like to share anyway. We're glad you shared anyway. So I've always had a little fun fact that I've always remembered about the Mona Lisa. It actually wasn't super popular until it was stolen in the early 1900s. It was stolen by an Italian man named Vincenzo, I'm going to butcher this, Perugia? You guys, I don't speak Italian. And was caught out a few years later in Italy. Where I drew parallels was that dude and Genet were both workers at the Louvre. That's pretty much it, but also her saying she knew it was the real Mona Lisa because she was the one who took it from the wall. These turned out inconsequential, but I had wondered if we would end up seeing the Daryl Dixon storyline end up in Italy at some point, perhaps someone representing the Mona Lisa being hidden there. Okay. At the time, I wondered if Laurent was going to get kidnapped by Genet and her group and taken to Italy. It seems like I remember something about Italy, and I'm not calling to memory what it was yet. Not that I don't know that they're necessarily, unless it was just conjecture and someone saying maybe sometime they will film in Italy. I don't remember for sure, but it seems like Italy is a little bit familiar. So there might be an Italian connection somewhere. The other thing, though, is that you said this ended up being, okay, what did you say? Inconsequential. You said that this is inconsequential, but I don't think it is. I mean, I think that that's a really good tie to say that Genet stole the Mona Lisa. She did. After the Louvre went down, she went in and got it. And the fact that there was a real life person that did this, I mean, even if Italy doesn't end up being a thing, the fact of the matter is, if somebody went into the Louvre looking for the Mona Lisa, it wouldn't be there anymore. You know, it's missing because someone took it. And that's very much what happened with Beth. They went back to get her body, we believe, and she was missing because someone took her someplace else. And where they thought she would be, she was not there. So I think you're onto something with that connection. It's very subtle. But we'll have to look into that a little bit more and see if there are any other parallels between the guy that took the Mona Lisa, what happened there, and the storyline. And yeah, we'll have to wait and see if there's any kind of Italian connection. I mean, now that the show is filming in Europe, I think that they're having fun and they're going to film everywhere they can just to explore different places and how how those places look in the zombie apocalypse, you know, so I wouldn't be surprised if they went to other places and filmed too. On the other hand, they might not actually film there. They might just say that it's taking place there, because we've seen them do that too. When Carol went to Greenland, that was not actually Greenland. That was France. And we know that they're going to stop in the story. They're going to stop in England briefly, but they're not going to England to film. It's actually going to be Spain, but they're going to say it's England. So I don't know that they will actually film in Italy, but there could still be something in the show where they, you know, quote unquote, go to Italy. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And like I said, it seems like I've heard something about Italy before. So if anybody knows what that is, or if that sounds familiar and you know anything about Italy, let us know. Send it in. But thanks so much for sending this in. This is actually a really intriguing tie, and I will have to think about it and research it some more. See if I can get one of my fellow theorists to research it for me, who's better at research. Okay, guys. I'm going to call it quits there. And like I said, I will be back next time with a video that's going to do a deep dive into Clara.